Does it make sense to fade Todd Gurley this week or any week? Can Baker Mayfield exploit the league's worst defense? And who wants to win Devin's money? We got a special contest for you this week. Pay attention to the end of the show, and we'll tell you all about that. But first, welcome to the Football Guys Daily Fantasy Power Grid. I'm Austin Lee, and I'm joined, as always, by John Lee, Devin Knotts, and Ryan Hester. And during the next hour, we'll get you ready for the Week 7 main slate on DraftKings and FanDuel. But first, we're going to talk about the Vegas lines, look at the spreads and the totals, and see if it paints a picture for us of which games we should be looking at for DFS goodness. John Lee, tell us, what is Vegas showing you?
It's a different week this week. We've got a couple of the high-scoring games on primetime games, so they're off the main slate. And, of course, we don't talk about non-main slate games on this show. Top of the list this week, LA Rams at San Francisco, big 10-point favorites. The implied team total for the Rams this week, 31 points. There's no reason to think about avoiding Sean McVay or Todd Gurley. They seem to be matchup-proof, but they are big road favorites, which in the past has been pretty interesting in terms of fading that chalk. So we should definitely talk about that this evening. And then we have a series of home favorites, Tampa Bay against Cleveland. You've got Baltimore against New Orleans. The Chargers hosting Tennessee off that big win last week in Cleveland. Indianapolis at home against Derek Anderson-led Buffalo team. What year is this again? And then, of course, New England is on the road, and they're a favorite. These are the big teams we'll be looking at in terms of defenses. Indianapolis and Jacksonville playing the Bills and Texans respectively. So this is a kind of one of these weeks where we haven't seen yet this year, where typically we've had like a 57 or a 58-point game. I'm looking at the main slate. The highest game total is the Rams in San Francisco at 52 points. So the distribution is closed in this week compared to what we've seen in weeks past, which might mean that player distribution in terms of percentage rostered is a little tighter than what we've seen as well.
Yeah, you mentioned that we could be looking at a Derek Anderson-led Bills team there. We've also got Brock Osweiler back again this week with Ryan Tannehill already ruled out. So a couple of maybe interesting defensive matchups there. Ryan, I'm going to pitch it to you first to talk about quarterbacks. Who do you like this week?
Yeah, I'm going to start cheap because you've got Ben Roethlisberger on a bye this week, Aaron Rodgers on a bye this week, Patrick Mahomes off the main slate. So you've Matt Ryan off the main slate. So there's not a lot of high-end talent to go after. And then we also, you tease Todd Gurley. He's expensive again, as he should be. So starting in the kind of mid to cheap range, he was the cover boy on my rent a quarterback column this week, and that's Joe Flacco. Flacco is a guy who's his defense on his own team can really limit his fantasy upside. But they are playing New Orleans this week, which is certainly a far cry from playing Tennessee last week when the team could take the air out of the ball. So I think he has a safe floor due to volume. That team passes a lot in all game situations, neutral or otherwise. And hopefully the Saints can put some points on the board and make Baltimore continue throwing. So Flacco is sort of where I'm starting in terms of cash games, actually.
Yikes.
Devin, you don't like the Flacco call. Tell me more. Tell me who you like and why not.
I can go even lower.
Yeah, I'm sure you could. I just noticed my red thing is across the room, so I'll have to get that after I talk. But why wouldn't we? If we're going cheap, why wouldn't on DraftKings? Why wouldn't we go Mitchell Trubisky at 56? So Trubisky, the Patriots have allowed 350 yards on back-to-back weeks. This Bears offense is looking significantly better. They're spreading the ball pretty wide, using Taylor Gabriel and Tariq Cohen in the backfield, or in the passing game, I should say. I'm not going there. I think on DraftKings it's pretty easy this week. It's find a way to spend up to Tom Brady at 6,100. He's just too cheap. The Bears run defense is solid. It's one of the better units in the league, and I think that the Patriots are starting to round into form from a passing standpoint. So Brady's where I'm starting. I also like Jameis Winston going back to that this week. EJ Gaines and Terrence Mitchell are out, which we'll talk about. And outside of Denzel Ward, it leaves the Browns pretty susceptible against the pass. So TJ Carey, who's a slot corner, is moving to the outside. Brian Body Calhoun, who's the backup slot corner, is moving to the slot. So it's a unit that's pretty banged up. They've been good against the pass this year, but with all the injuries, I think that could catch up to them. He's a little bit priced up on DraftKings, a little bit more of a reasonable price at 78 on FanDuel. But for me, it's Trubisky and Brady on DraftKings, Winston and Trubisky and Mayfield on FanDuel.
Nice, Ryan. I saw you flash up the red sign there somewhere. What did you want to say?
Yeah, it was just about Winston's price up on DraftKings. He's the third highest priced quarterback of main slate guys there, and he's 7th on FanDuel. So I just like him a little better on the other side.
I agree with that. I think he's more of a GPP play on DraftKings, and he's cash viable on FanDuel.
That makes sense.
But this is the first time this season where we haven't had this surefire quarterback that everyone has to go to. It seems like for the last couple of weeks, last week it was Jameis Winston, and it seems like this is a more fun week to me. I mean, it's not in cash games. So far this year, it's been okay. You have to start with these 4 guys and then fill in the rest of your cash lineup. So I think this is a better week, and there's a lot of options. But
John, we haven't heard
from Flacco has the upside. I just don't.
You don't see who has the upside, you said?
Joe Flacco. So we're looking for 300 plus yards every week, and he hasn't done that the last couple. So he still has the deep ball potential, but Ryan's still jaded by his 60-yard performance against the Steelers. So.
And the Saints, I think, can inspire big performances from quarterbacks who don't otherwise have to do that in most weeks. But, John, is there a way to go even cheaper at quarterback to try to squeeze in Todd Gurley?
You're trying to bait me into a red sign from Devin. I know what you're trying to do here. I'll talk about this guy in a minute. So I'm going to say I agree with Devin on one thing, and that is that this week there is not a clear-cut quarterback for cash games, nor in GPPs, in my opinion. And so we agree on that much. Where I vehemently disagree with him is that Mitch Trubisky is cash game viable in any sense of the term.
Why?
He's a terrible quarterback. That's why.
Have you watched the last 2 weeks?
Those are the only 2 weeks in his career that have been worth watching. I'm looking back at his game logs because when I pulled this up, I thought, well, maybe I had one too many glasses of wine before the show. I'm looking 128, 113, 107, 164. I'm not going to read through the whole thing.
You're looking at last year, though.
Okay.
He's completing 70% of his passes this year.
Let's look at this year. Let's look at this year. 171 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. 220 yards, no touchdowns, 1 pick. And then we get into 2 weeks. You talk about recency bias against Tampa Bay. Yeah, he did well against Tampa Bay, but put me in a quarterback and under center against Tampa Bay, and I'll throw for 7 touchdowns.
But is New England that much better than Tampa Bay's secondary? They've allowed 350 on back-to-back weeks.
They've allowed it to Andrew Luck and Patrick Mahomes, though.
Thank you.
And also, Mitchell Trubisky has 9 touchdowns in his last 57 pass attempts. That is wildly unsustainable. It's just not going to happen. I don't know. I can't get on board with it either.
He's 5,600.
Flacco's 100 cheaper. And Austin, Devin, you may as well go get the red sign because if you really want to jam in the running backs, I'll say it. I'll do it. You wanted us to talk about it. C.J. Beathard is the guy that you want to put in if you really want to jam in the high usage players.
I'm fine with C.J. Beathard.
He's 48. Okay, I'm shocked. So, usually when we get below 5K, Devin gets a little.
I mentioned it last week. Start any quarterback against the Rams. Why? Yeah. Because they're going to be down 3 touchdowns and have to throw 50 times. I mentioned Case Keenum last week. You guys hated on it, and he had over 300 yards.
Yep. So are we saying for cash games that Beathard is plausible this week?
I am.
You'll do it. So
yeah. I think he's plausible. I don't know if I have the balls to do it, but
I think a lot of it has to depend on how you deal with the running back position, because running back, I think, is really deep this week. You can go high with guys like Gurley and Zeke, or you can go low with a few guys we'll talk about in a few minutes. But if you go low, you can afford a guy like Tom Brady. I guess that's probably as high as you want to go this week. You can go Kirk Cousins, but I'm not sure I want to do that. But, for me, Flacco is the guy against New Orleans for many of the same reasons that Devin's describing for going against the Rams. New Orleans is going to put points on the board, and Baltimore will throw the ball. They haven't done a whole lot with Alex Collins on the ground in terms of yardage. Sure, he scored twice last week, but I don't know that he's topped more than 75 yards this season off the cuff. And for me, that's the way I want to go. 5,400. He's cheap enough. I like him there. And let's not forget that New Orleans is a pass funnel defense. They're number one DVOA against the rush and 30th DVOA against the pass, which just means that they're funneling a lot of that action on their defense through their secondary.
All right, cash game options. Who are we going with? You have to name one guy.
Flacco.
Ryan
or Beathard. But no, I'd say Flacco over. And just to put numbers to what John just said, Baltimore passes on 66% of neutral script situations, which I define as within 7 points either way. And New Orleans has teams throw against them 64% of the time in those same situations. So both of those are very high rates. Both of those are top 7, maybe top 5. Okay. So just to put a little bit of stats behind what John just said. So Flacco would be the one that I would pick over Beathard. But it's tight because that 700 could really be useful elsewhere.
For me, it's Brady on DraftKings and Winston on FanDuel.
Right on.
I can live with Brady.
Talk to me, guys. Tampa Bay's pass defense has not looked good. Are we considering Baker Mayfield for GPPs at all? Let me see those Black Eyed Joe signs. Are you like, yeah, I got some exposure to this guy? Oh, Devin says, yeah, okay. Everybody says yes. Okay, so he's in play. I just want
the ankle concerns me just because he didn't look right after he tweaked it on the sideline, but Tampa Bay's defense is too bad not to target him.
Yeah, makes sense.
Agreed.
All right.
Mayfield also a bigger discount on FanDuel than DraftKings, at least in terms of positional pricing.
Makes sense. All right, guys, let's move on to running backs. If you want to see our content, go check out footballguys.com. We've got our DFS landing page with all kinds of articles and tools, and also points to some of the key sort of general NFL features we have at footballguys.com to help you out with your research. Running backs, we've got a few injury situations we're keeping our eye out on. Isaiah Crowell didn't practice on Thursday, so maybe Bilal Powell gets some extra run this week. Dalvin Cook, it feels like we're watching him every week, so I don't know if it's a thing until he actually shows up, but Latavius Murray had a big game last time. Chris Thompson was a limited practice on Thursday. He might be coming back into the fold. If not, then Adrian Peterson may get a big workload again versus Dallas. And then Theo Riddick hasn't done much this year, but he didn't practice on Thursday, and if he's out, Kerryon Johnson might get a boost against Miami, which seems like a strong matchup. Devin, let's start with you, man. Running back.
Let's not spend any time on this, but start Todd Gurley in cash. I mean, can we move on? All right.
Let's
do it.
Find a way to make it work.
He's matchup proof. So every week until, I don't know, his price is $11,000 on DraftKings starting.
I like
Got that out of the way. Peyton Barber on DraftKings going extremely cheap. So this Browns defense is pretty banged up. Joe Schobert is going to miss several weeks with a hamstring injury. It's already a thin linebacker unit with Michael Kendricks being cut earlier this season. And then to make matters worse, James Burgess, who is Schobert's backup, is also going to miss this week. So this is going to put Jannard Avery, who's a 5th-round pick out of Memphis, as a starting linebacker, having to move Christian Kirksey, who's been horrible this year and dealing with injuries, from the outside into the inside. It's already a Browns unit that really has struggled allowing 130 yards or more to running backs in 3 of their 6 weeks. Barber's, like I said, 3,800, just simply too cheap for me. And then the other guy that I like this week is Soni Michelle. Just because at 5,500 on DraftKings, too cheap of a price once again. He's getting – I know a lot of people have issues with starting Patriots running backs, but this year's a little bit different in the sense that they really only have two guys in James White and Soni Michelle. And Michelle's been good. He's averaged over 100 yards in his last 3 games. I think that the Patriots exposed the Bears this week. We saw it a little bit last week where Frank Gore and Kenyon Drake ran for over 150 yards combined. So I think this defense isn't as good as people think. So I think that those two guys are guys that I'm looking at.
Nice. Ryan, do you like those picks, or you got other guys in mind?
Yeah, I just wonder. I mean, no concern on Michelle with his lack of pass game involvement, combined with the idea that, New England is a short road favorite. That tends to be a situation that we want to be aware of. And if that becomes a game that gets neutral or they get behind in, are we sure Michelle's involvement doesn't just kind of go up in smoke? But I guess I'll let Devin get back to that later. But before I give the mic back, another running back in that same game that I like, and it's not a cash game play by any means because it's a very high ceiling, low floor. But it's pretty rare that a pass catching back actually is maybe more value priced on DraftKings than he is on FanDuel. But Tariq Cohen is the RB15 in terms of pricing on DraftKings, and he's RB11 on FanDuel. So DraftKings is where you want a player like that. He has 100-yard potential receiving and perhaps even rushing if he's to break a big play. And I think it's a game that the Bears are going to have to pass. I don't know that Jordan Howard is going to be, a deciding factor in the game. Cohen has played 47 and 49% of the team's snaps in the last 2 weeks, and he has 30% of the team's total targets, not running back targets, total targets in each of the last 2 games. So he's being used a lot more in the last 2 weeks, and it seems to be working. And nothing he is doing will limit that usage this week. So
Jordan Howard has lost snaps in his last 4 weeks, so his snap count has gone from 73% down to 51% last week.
Yeah. So between Cohen and Taylor Gabriel, and then of course Allen Robinson on the outside, who's been quiet, but I mean those first 2 guys I mentioned certainly give the Bears a lot of flexibility with what they can do, and I think Matt Nagy likes that. We've seen it from Andy Reid and his coaching tree that's something that they like to do. So I like Cohen in the game. I think a handful of catches is certainly not out of question.
John, who you got at running back?
Running back, we talked about a few of these guys. I think Peyton Barber against Cleveland just simply too cheap. 3,800. I like him in both cash and GPP because I think 4x upside is there on DraftKings. If Isaiah Crowell does not play, and I think you opened with this, he did not practice on Thursday. Bilal Powell is going to be a 3-down running back on the Jets against Minnesota. He's only 4,200 on DraftKings. I like him in cash if Isaiah Crowell is inactive on Sunday morning.
It's a bad matchup, but
it is a bad matchup, and I completely agree with that. But it's just one of these deals where the guy's probably going to get 15-plus touches at just a hair over 4,000. And that team is also, we'll talk about this in a minute, but they're also going to be without Quincy Enunwa. And so, Bilal Powell will be, even more involved in the passing game. And he already is a decent receiver out of the backfield. Yep. And then at the high end, we talked about that guy in Los Angeles, whose name I won't mention again. But let's not forget about Zeke Elliott as well against the Washington Redskins. I think he's pretty cheap this week at 8,100. He goes up against Washington. Washington has a 30th ranked DVOA defense, and historically he's been very good against this Washington defense. He played against them last year, 33 carries, 150 yards, 2 touchdowns. The year prior to that, he had decent matchups against them. 21 carries, 83 yards, a touchdown. And in the second game, he had a pair of touchdowns, 97 yards. And in terms of his volume for a cash game perspective, his last 3 games, 29 touches, 27 touches, 25 touches. You just can't get that type of volume at $8,000 on DraftKings. So I like him in all formats on DraftKings.
Yeah, it's not the same defense as it was last year. It's a better unit with Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen, but Ezekiel Elliott still is too cheap, and he's on pace to have 61 catches, which is almost double what his career total is, or career average for a season is. So they're using him a lot more like Gurley in the sense that they're getting him out in space on the pass.
They were giving him carries while they were up like 30 points in the game last week. It was kind of crazy, but that just shows how much he's used. And then, quick stat to support the matchup with Washington is one running back has more than 10 carries against Washington this season, and it was Mark Ingram who had 16 for 53 and 2 touchdowns. So they're a team that could be beaten on the run despite what their overall stats suggest. Their strength of schedule there is pretty weak.
I got a few running backs I want to ask you guys about. Is there an opportunity to potentially get Alvin Kamara at low ownership in this awful matchup in GPPs?
Yeah, it's an opportunity. I don't know if you want to take it, but he won't be owned very high, to answer your question.
I'm kind of curious what Steve's numbers say early in the week.
While you look that up, Austin,
yeah.
One guy that I had also written down just because of opportunity is TJ Yeldon. We know that, Jamal Charles is there, but I'm unconcerned about that until it burns me. Yeldon's 6,400 on DraftKings, and we know he's a pass-catching back. So similar to what John pointed out about Bilal Powell being a 3-down guy who has pass-catching acumen, Yeldon is kind of a souped-up version of that. So he's somebody that I'm entertaining as well if I want to buy up at quarterback and not do the C.J. Beathard, Joe Flacco strategy I discussed earlier.
Is that GPP only?
I'm entertaining it for more conservative purposes. He's still a 3-down back and only 6,400. I mean, yeah, it's pricey for TJ Yeldon, but not for a 3-down running back, if that makes
Houston
sense.
hasn't allowed a running back to go over 73 yards this year and held Saquon Barkley, basically shut him down to 61 yards. So that's the only concern I would have.
No, I agree. It's a tough matchup, but I like the price and opportunity.
Can I mention a couple more guys?
Yeah, real quick, though, Steve's ownership, he has Kamara under 15% on both sites. So not top 5. Well, he's got him top 5 on FanDuel and 7th on DraftKings. So
that's way too high.
Yeah, that's higher than I was expecting. So, maybe it's not the
if
matchup.
He's sub 5%, I'll be interested. But until then, I mean, Ingram just looked like he was going to take such a large share out of Kamara's workload.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Mention your other guys, Devin.
All right, so Duke Johnson. So we talked about the Browns a little bit earlier. This Tampa Bay defense is allowing 67 yards per game to opposing running backs, receiving yards per game to opposing running backs. I think that the Browns receiving unit, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but they're decimated with injuries, and I think they're really going to try and focus on getting Duke the ball more. Frank Gore, mentioned him last week, but he's really the guy who's taking over Kenyon Drake. So Drake had a really bad fumble at the end of the game last week, and this Lions defense is allowing. I mean, opposing running backs are averaging 5.9 yards per rush, and 3 of them have gone over 100 yards. So this is a unit that is really, really, really struggling. The way to beat Detroit is on the ground. So if it's another hot day, I haven't looked up the weather, but I mean, the Bears defense was gassed by the third quarter last week, and Frank Gore was just able to run all day. So I think he's still too cheap. And then the one question I want to ask you guys is Kerryon Johnson. So he's really high on David's projections this week. What are your thoughts on Kerryon Johnson? Because I don't know if I can go there just because the consistency and the workload. I know that Theo Riddick is out, but I don't know if I can go there, but I want to get your thoughts.
I don't know if I can either. I was surprised to see him there as well. And granted, he may absorb a little more pass game role without Riddick, but we still have LeGarrette Blount to contend with in terms of the goal line role. There's some narrative street that suggests maybe, out of the bye, the better player starts to take over, but I don't know if I can really feel confident in that. And then also, I mean, Miami has Brock Osweiler going again. I feel like they're going to try to play the game very slowly. And, to your point, they have a good advantage on the ground, and they're going to try to exploit that, which may limit possession. So it's pretty tough to get to Kerryon Johnson for me.
I mean, outside of the Patriots game, which we all remember on Sunday night, he's had 5 carries, 8 carries, 9 carries, and 12 carries, and only has 13 receptions total on the year. I just don't think the volume is there. I know he's been good and averaging 5.7 yards per carry, but to me, you're taking a lot of risk if you start him in cash. You can take him in GPP as a lot, but he has 1 touchdown in the year. So
yeah, I don't even think there's a ceiling for GPP though.
You're hoping for a long run, and I think that Tariq Cohen and some of the other guys that we mentioned have just as high, if not a higher ceiling.
Yeah, the matchups here for both teams, Miami and Detroit's run defenses are not very strong, and so that could really slow down the pace of this game, like Ryan was saying. So I think that could be an issue. Let's move on to wide receivers. There's a lot of injuries we're watching here. Cooper Kupp is out. So
don't start Josh Reynolds.
we
fell into this trap last year where everyone was on Josh Reynolds. Don't start him. There. That's my rant.
So were you saying, Ryan, you held up the agreement sign to say to not start him? Is that what you're saying there, Ryan? Or
Agreed. Yep.
Okay. John, you like Josh Reynolds? I can see it on your face.
You're on mute, John.
Oh man, he's on mute.
John, alt A.
I'm gonna fill in for John here.
He's back. He's back.
Oh no, I was on mute because maybe somebody didn't want to hear what I was saying. But
yeah,
I do think in Week 12 last year against the Saints, I think he delivered value on his salary, if I'm not mistaken. But
was that the game where he barely squeaked in the end zone at the end just to do so?
Yes. But I agree with you guys. So we're in alignment here. I just wanted to point out that I think he did on the week that everybody was on him last year.
What was it, 2 for 9 and a touchdown?
4 for 37 and a touchdown. So like 16 points, and I want to say he was a 3K crapper. So he delivered 5X.
All right. I'm pretty sure there was another week where everyone was on him and he didn't perform, but.
You're probably right.
3,500 though in GPPs. I mean, if you want to go there, fine. But in cash, some people are going to go there, and they should. That is an absolute mistake.
I agree.
The other injuries we were watching, DeAndre Hopkins did not practice on Thursday, so maybe that gives a little extra work for the other receivers there. There was a Sammy Coates sighting, maybe, but probably not. Don't do that. The Indianapolis receivers are banged up. T.Y. Hilton got a limited practice on Thursday. Ryan Grant did not practice on Thursday. And then Ted Ginn for the Saints is on IR. That may open up some more snaps for Traquan Smith. Let's see. We're also watching the Bears receiving core. Allen Robinson did not practice on Thursday. And then the Jets receivers, we mentioned it before that Quincy Enunwa is out, but Terrell Pryor didn't practice Thursday either. So they may be shorthanded at receiver and at running back this week. John, tell me about some receivers that you like.
Is Todd Gurley, is Adam Thielen the Todd Gurley at the wide receiver position? Is that what we're doing in cash games at this point?
Not as much of a lock, but it's hard to make a case to keep him out.
The guy's incredible right now. The yardage that he sees every week, he's hit that 3-point 100-yard bonus on DraftKings every single week this season. I'm not suggesting that you have to lock him into your lineup the way that we talked about with Gurley, but if you can do it against the Jets are so weak at the slot corner position. They've got what's his name? Buster Skrine, who is hurt.
Your boy.
You love ragging on him, don't you?
I do. And I typically call him Skrine, so I'm getting better.
Mm-hmm.
Buster Skrine is injured. I don't know whether he's going to play, but Perry Nickerson, this rookie last week, was absolutely terrible in coverage as well. I think he's the bottom, if I'm not mistaken, or the next to last rated cornerback on Pro Football Focus to this point in the season. And he's going up against the best wide receiver, at least statistically speaking, in the league. Try to get Adam Thielen into your lineups if you can. But, so he's the obvious one. The two guys I'm looking at lower than him, Robert Woods at 7,000 against San Francisco. I really like him this week for a lot of different reasons. But the major one is I think he's too cheap. And then
that's DraftKings. That's a DraftKings price.
That is correct. That is
7,700 on FanDuel.
It's too high.
Yep.
And the last guy in cash games, I'm only talking cash games here. I'll hand off GPPs to the other fellas, but in cash games, with Nuke Hopkins still not practicing on Thursday, we don't know what's going to happen on Friday. But in cash games, if he doesn't practice on Friday, I think Keke Coutee is a guy that at 4,300 we have to be looking at against Jacksonville because he's going to be running those inside routes staying away from A.J. Bowie. He's going to be staying away from Jalen Ramsey.
Oh, you think Ramsey slides down to the slot, though?
He does, but he's not going to go in there after Keke Coutee. He's going to go in there after a guy like Nuke Hopkins.
But let's just play this out, right? So would they put Bouye on Fuller and Ramsey on Coutee? I mean, how would they? I think he's a better play if Hopkins does play.
I was just going to say the same.
I think that's fair. I don't know. I mean, maybe you put Sammy Coates. So the one thing Sammy Coates can do is what?
Drop the ball,
drop passes,
run deep 9 routes,
run and drop,
and you just send him on a 9 route to take one of those guys out of play. I mean, that's what I would do. But you guys make a fair point. But either way, Coutee's in play at 4,300. I think he catches 6 balls for 60 yards. He gets you into cash game territory on DraftKings.
I love him if Hopkins is playing, by the way.
Yeah. And while we're talking about low 4K slot guys on DraftKings against teams who have good outside corners, what about Jermaine Kearse? The guy had 10 targets last week. He had more catches last week than anyone else on the Jets had targets. And whether it's the offense or whether it's just Sam Darnold being conservative, he throws to the slot more than any quarterback in the league. I don't know if that's true or not. It just seems like it. Maybe it is true. But I don't know. In a PPR format, who's to say he doesn't get 6-7 catches? He seemed to be the favorite guy after Enunwa went out.
It was interesting. For those of you listening to the audio-only version, John was all ready to be supportive of some sort of slot receiver and immediately had like the most disgusted look on his face.
Our listeners are smart enough not to start Jermaine Kearse. I'm not.
Oh, we lost Devin. He's cutting in and out a little bit here.
I mean, so here's my feeling with cash game plays, right? The thing about a wide receiver in a cash game is that he's only as good as his quarterback. And I'm just not a big fan of unproven quarterbacks. And that's not to say that Deshaun Watson, who I talked about with Keke Coutee, is a world beater, but I do have more confidence in him getting the ball to Coutee than I do to Sam Darnold getting the ball to Jermaine Kearse.
Devin, who do you like at receiver?
So I do like Keke Coutee. Marquis Goodwin. So Marquis Goodwin is the typical.
Oh no, we lost Devin again. His audio's gone. John, when you had your sign up for the slot receiver and you were like all excited to agree with Ryan,
I was.
Yeah. Who were you thinking of?
I think I know who it is. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ryan. Let's hear it. See if you know who I'm talking about.
Were you going to go back to Indy and go with Chester Rogers?
No, I wasn't.
I'm sorry, Ryan Grant.
No, neither one.
All right. Then go ahead.
I was thinking
Gabriel.
about. No, wow, we're way over the place. Maybe I'll hold this for a bit. Maybe.
All right, you go. You just do it because I'm done guessing wrong.
All right, I'm going with Willie Snead.
That was my next one.
At $4,000 against P.J. Williams in New Orleans. P.J. Williams, he's the third worst cornerback in coverage per Pro Football Focus this season, allowing 75% of his catches of passes to be caught while in his coverage, a quarterback rating almost 150, and Willie Snead is sneakily getting up there every week in terms of snap count, in terms of targets, and oh, by the way, he's playing a team that tendered him earlier this season, so maybe there's a little bit of a narrative to be had there.
Revenge narrative.
Yeah, I was wondering if you were going to go with that for sure.
Yeah, I don't mind Snead. I just like other receiver on his team a little better, but maybe Devin, you can play them both.
Devin, you're back. Your audio is live. What's your receiving takes?
Yeah, so Marquis Goodwin, I think, is the.
Nope, just kidding. Ryan, sorry, man.
What Devin was going to say is that Marquis Goodwin is a very sound play this week. I mean, we saw what he did Monday night in the Island game. And again, the volume will be there against the Rams. Marcus Peters hasn't been very good. The Rams' pass defense hasn't been what we thought it would be in week one. Aqib Talib got hurt. That certainly contributed. And Goodwin seems to be playing that X role, that narrative street X role in the Shanahan offense that does really well. So back to full health, seems to be a guy that CJ Beathard can target and likes to target. And so I do agree with Devin that he's a good play, and he's probably even cash game viable despite the fact that everybody knows him as an Olympic sprinter, and that tends to be more of a GPP profile of skill set.
Yeah. All right, Devin, one more shot here.
Nope, he loses.
All right, let's go to tight ends. I've got no glaring injury issues here. You guys can pick Ricky Seals-Jones or whoever the heck you want because Devin doesn't have audio. It's free. So get in your craziest tight end.
Devin has to do this for the rest of the show.
Before Devin comes back. All right, John, hit me with a tight end pick.
My favorite tight end this week is David Njoku, 4,200 against Tampa Bay. There isn't a team in the league that allows more production to the tight end position than Tampa Bay. Njoku, over the past 3 weeks since Baker Mayfield has come on board as the starting quarterback in Cleveland, he's got 30 targets. That's most on the team. Jarvis Landry has 29, just a bit behind. But Jarvis isn't even catching 50% of those passes. It's almost like they're not quite yet in sync. I think Njoku is the guy I want to be looking at there. 4,200 on DraftKings. I love him in cash games, especially at a volatile position where, again, we're missing Travis Kelce this week on the main slate. That's one big, and if you want to, it's one big option off the charts. You can pay up for Zach Ertz, but he's going to cost you $7,100, I believe. So From that end, it scares the hell out of me to think about putting him into my cash game lineups because it is still a tight end position. So I'd much rather have Njoku. If you want to go with Eric Ebron, I mean, as long as one of those Indianapolis receivers is still out, either T.Y. Hilton or Ryan Grant, I don't have a problem with that. But I still think the $1,200 discount on David Njoku is the way you want to go.
Yeah, Ryan, who are you looking at tight end?
Yeah, it has to be Njoku. I mean, last week this position was all punt, but this week there aren't even any punt options that look even remotely good. And so, part of the reason that I'm willing to go, or that I'm wanting to go down and at quarterback to Flacco or even Beathard is to lock in Njoku. He's the cheapest option I feel comfortable with, and I think he will outperform at least half of the 8-9 players priced above him on DraftKings. I just think he's the guy. I mean, he has led the team in either targets or catches in all 3 of Baker Mayfield's starts, and again, John said the matchup's great, the usage is great. Those two seem to have a lot of chemistry, and in my trend spotting column this week, I posted a tweet that I actually put on my Twitter back after Mayfield's first appearance, which was that Thursday night game against the Jets. And it was Tyrod Taylor's next-gen passing chart against Baker Mayfield's from the same night, and they each played about a half. And Taylor's are all up the sideline outside the hash marks, and Mayfield's scatter plot is more, middle of the field. And I just quote tweeted it that said, Njoku truthers unite, because it was something that it was just very telling as to how Njoku was going to be used. And I think that has been building ever since, and it could really explode this week. He did score last week, but he could even do a lot more than that this week.
Yeah. We should be nice to Devin, though. He's been dealing with a stomach bug all day. He's back.
We just talked about David Njoku for like the entire time you were gone. So
so don't bring him up again.
I've been here.
Okay, good.
And I think the one thing that I'll mention is O.J. Howard. So looking at Howard, I think that he's a solid play, particularly in GPPs. And really he's becoming the number 3 or 4 target in that offense that I think is gonna. We talked about the linebacking issues for the Browns earlier. It should allow some options for Howard in getting into space against some unproven Browns linebacking core.
We're not looking at paying up for someone like Gronkowski and GPPs, right? I mean, there's just too many other interesting pay-up plays this week, right? No? John maybe likes Gronkowski this week? Tell me about it. Why not? It's Gronkowski.
He's got 2 touchdown upside, right? Yeah. And I don't think I could be wrong. We're in week 7, but I don't think we're going to see Rob Gronkowski cheaper than he is this week at $6,000 for the remainder of the year. In the last 4 weeks, the Chicago Bears have allowed a touchdown to the tight end position. Those included Nick O'Leary, Cameron Brate, Ricky Seals-Jones, anybody, and Will Dissly. if those four guys can score touchdowns in 4 straight weeks, then I think Gronk can get in the end zone at 6,000. So I don't have a problem with him this week if you want to pay up at the position.
Ben Watson revenge game?
Yes. No, at 3,000, I like the play.
Yeah.
Especially with Ted Ginn being out and a little bit of unfamiliarity with Traquan Smith. I don't hate that play at 3,000.
It's only 5,200 on FanDuel as well.
Also, Baltimore allows 28% of its total passing yardage to tight ends, highest percentage in the NFL.
Oh, nice. I like it. Good call, guys. All right, defenses. Devin, we'll come back to you since your audio is working swell. Who do you like at defense?
I'm just doing it every week. Cleveland Browns. Too cheap. At 3,200, they're going up against Jameis Winston, who we've seen Winston turn the ball over frequently. It didn't work last week, but it's worked in about 4 of the 6 weeks this year. I think that they're a play that they'll give up points, but I think they'll get sacks and turnovers.
Yeah, and they're only 2,400 on DraftKings.
3,200 on FanDuel.
Yeah. John, defenses.
The Colts against Derek Anderson. Derek Anderson was relevant when I was in graduate school back in the early 2000s. I mean, this guy's got it. Is he older than me? I don't know. Maybe he's
35.
He's only 35.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's the Colts. I don't know. And you know, if you don't want to spend 3,300 on a team not named the Jaguars, I get it. But that's the way I'm going. And if you want to go super cheap, I go on the opposite end of Devin and say the Buccaneers against Cleveland. I'm not so convinced that Cleveland is that good. I like Cleveland. I really enjoy rooting for them. They're a young team. They've been so bad for so long. And the Buccaneers have a terrible defense, but at 2,300, I'm fine punting because there isn't a defense that I absolutely love this week. Probably the same type of thinking that Devin put into his Cleveland call. That's why I like the Buccaneers.
What if Braylon Edwards came back to play with Derek Anderson? Would that make a difference?
Well, he is throwing to Kelvin Benjamin, which is kind of ironic because I think those two were together in like 2009.
Ryan,
they've had some nice games together.
Yeah.
The punt defense that I kind of like even almost as much or maybe better than Cleveland and Tampa. We still have a Brock Osweiler start happening this week. So I know they're on the road. I know that we talked about both teams' run games, and we really like to pick defenses that are facing passing attempts because you get your sacks, your strip sacks, etc. But it's a defense against Brock Osweiler, and it's very cheap. So Detroit, don't forget about them.
Yeah, don't let one Brock Osweiler game let you forget who Brock Osweiler is.
The turnover potential there, though?
Is Brock Osweiler starting?
Right, yeah. They can run the ball.
And that's the risk. But at 2,400, I mean, Cleveland and Tampa could each give up 30-something points as well and not have a lot of turnovers. So it's all a dart throw at that price.
Yeah. All right. Any other defense talk?
To be fair, Derek Anderson has only thrown 5 interceptions since 2011.
Has he played 5 games since 2011?
I think he's played 14 games and only thrown 5 picks.
If you include preseason, he might have thrown more touchdowns than that to Calvin Benjamin since 2011.
There you go. All right. Let's talk about some stacks, guys. Ryan, I want to hear about which stacks you like, which of these games you're exploiting.
So the Baltimore-New Orleans game has a surprisingly high, at least surprising to me, total, and people in Vegas are smarter than me. So if I go with that logic, I kind of teased a lot of this already, but you can stack that whole thing for reasonably cheap. Joe Flacco, John mentioned Willie Snead, which I thought was a great call, especially after the cornerback matchup, and John Brown. I said him here last week and it didn't work, so we're just going to go right back to it until he turns into my new Julio Jones. But John Brown is 3rd in the NFL in air yards. He's not even 1st on his own team in targets, which tells you he is getting targeted deep. And New Orleans allows over 20% of their total attempts are deep attempts against. So big things could happen for John Brown. His ADOT is 19.7 yards, so all it takes is 1 at his price. So and I even like running it back with Michael Thomas. Austin, you asked if we could ever get Kamara at a lower ownership. We might not be able to get Michael Thomas at much lower ownership than he should be this week. I think Steve had him at around 11%, which for a guy who is going to get 8, 9, 10 targets in a high-scoring game, you could do worse. So I like all 4 of those guys in a GPP lineup and just hope that Vegas is right and it gets at or above the total.
I like that Michael Thomas GPP call. Devin, who do you like stacking?
Yeah, before my internet went out, Mitchell Trubisky and Taylor Gabriel. So Gabriel is quickly becoming the number 1 receiver in this offense. And he's had over 100 yards in each of his last 2 games. So I think they're trying to use his speed, get him – he's running all sorts of routes. He's running on the outside. He's moving down to the slot. So he's one of my favorite receivers really in all formats. But I think pairing him with Trubisky gives you a ton of options this week.
Nice. John, who are you stacking?
You know who gives you a ton of options this week? Derek Anderson to Kelvin Benjamin.
No.
No. You already used your Kelvin Benjamin.
No.
No, I'm telling you.
Do better.
I'm going to do better. I have stacks that I like better, but listen to this lineup, guys.
You stole my final thoughts, you son of a gun. It was not Calvin Benjamin, though. It was just Derek Anderson.
Oh, wow.
Derek Anderson is 4,300. Now, okay, so I'm going to preface what I'm about to tell you by saying if you're putting in 10 lineups, do not make this more than 1. So less than 10%. But I love what I was able to do. I built a lineup, and if you play this and win the Millionaire Maker, I want at least a 6-pack of Bud Light.
Ask for something
$20
good.
and buy yourself a 6-pack.
I don't ask for much in life. Derek Anderson, you can tag him with Kelvin Benjamin for 7,800. Add in Peyton Barber, who I think we had a unanimous decision on. You can have Todd Gurley, Zeke Elliott, Adam Thielen, and Willie Snead, who is my favorite stack with Joe Flacco. And then you can add in the best defense in the league, although last week didn't show it, with the Jacksonville Jaguars for 49,900. You still have $100 left, so you can brag that you didn't spend it all.
Derek Anderson was signed by this team like a week ago.
9 days ago.
Oh,
9 days ago. He has experience with his head coach and his offensive coordinator from past lives, so there's that, which makes it really like he signed 10 days ago. It's tough, but boy, can you do a lot with the other guys in the lineup.
Absolutely not.
I'm with Devin on this.
I'm fine with Derek Anderson. It's Kelvin Benjamin that refused to run routes with Josh Allen that I just can't get behind.
That's because he had already run routes with Derek Anderson earlier that morning.
Okay.
He felt like he was cheating on his old pal Anderson.
That's right.
You used your one Derek Anderson call this year, or Kelvin Benjamin call this year. You can't go back.
Oh my gosh, we're gonna get so blown up on the comments.
All right. But Derek I love Joe Flacco to Willie Snead this year. In all seriousness, or this week, excuse me. In all seriousness, that's the stack that I love, and it's only 1,800 or 1,600 more.
I have one more that I need to mention.
Please do.
Since my internet also went out during the wide receiver position.
Sure.
Mike Evans and Jameis Winston. So I think Denzel Ward is going to shadow Deshaun Jackson this week because Mike Evans has 50 pounds and about 4 inches on Ward, and the Browns have no one with the speed to cover Jackson besides Denzel Ward. So I think they'll put TJ Carey, who's 220 pounds, on Evans, and Evans will be the primary target in this game.
I like that insight. Parting thoughts, fellas. Players you weren't able to mention because your internet went out.
Let's talk about the giveaway.
Oh, let's talk about the giveaway. Devin, tell us about the giveaway.
All right. So since I had a good week last week with Melvin Gordon, I decided to pay back to all the commenters who love me. So here's what's going to happen. We're gonna put 3 different ways to enter. It'll be YouTube, it'll be iTunes reviews, and it'll be Twitter. So if you give an iTunes review, give us some way to contact you, whether it's your email, whether it's your Twitter account, Facebook, whatever. If it's YouTube comment, same thing. Twitter, Facebook, Is my internet going out again?
No, you're doing great.
Okay. Twitter, Facebook, email on YouTube. So comment there or retweet. So we're gonna put a tweet out at FBG Power Grid is the show's site, and
that's the Twitter handle for our show, FBG
Correct.
Power Grid.
So we will select one person from each of those, and next week you will play a contest against the four of us. If you beat the four of us, you don't have to win the contest. We'll give you $50. So you're essentially, if you retweet, if you give us a review on iTunes, or if you comment below, you can be as mean to me as you want in the comments. I don't really care. But as long as you're commenting and engaging with us, we're having fun with it. Or you can be nice. I appreciate those too. So it'll be completely random. So your comments won't affect if I select you guys. But we're just trying to give back to all the listeners and the growth of this show. So we've grown five times over the last 2 years, so 500%. And we just wanted to give some back to all the loyal listeners. So go to iTunes, go to YouTube comments, retweet Twitter, and you'll have a chance to play us in a contest and win $50. Well, depending on how it goes, we may run it a couple more times this year. If it's popular, if people like it. If not, all right, you have a better chance to win this week. So
nice.
And go do it all three ways. Increase your chances of getting one of the spots.
Yeah, definitely.
Make sure to have a way to contact you, though. We can't select you on YouTube and iTunes. On Twitter, we'll just direct message you. But on iTunes and YouTube, if we don't have a way to contact you, kind of out of luck.
We appreciate everybody who comments on our YouTube channel. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and like the video if you like it.
Especially the people that want to fire me. I love those people.
Yeah, I like that Ryan and John held up the red black-eyed Joe saying, like, no, don't be nice to Devin. Why would you do that? Even though he's been, like, puking his guts out today with a stomach bug. They're like, nah, be mean to him. All right, other parting thoughts. Ryan, was that your phone ringing, or was that you wanting to give us a parting thought?
Go to John first. I'm in a hotel room, and my phone is ringing. Who does that at this point?
Hey, John, would you like room service, or do you have a parting thought?
I'll give you a parting thought. So, what Devin said, get in there, respond, reply, do all those things. Let's see if anybody can take Devin's money. Although
John might start Kelvin Benjamin just to increase your chances of winning.
I very well might do that. I'm going to put one. I promise you this much. I'm going to put one millionaire maker lineup in, as I always do. And this week it will definitely be Derek Anderson to Kelvin Benjamin. I'm not kidding about that. We have a potential rookie of the year on staff this year, and that's Ryan Zamichelli. In fairness, he is, I think, the only rookie on staff. So he kind of wins by default no matter what happened. But he's been writing something called the Sharp Report throughout the season, where he goes back on FanDuel. We get a lot of complaints about we talk too much about DraftKings on this show. Well, here's an article that's written exclusively on FanDuel where Ryan gets into those $1,000 50-50s. These are big money, sharp guys playing cash games, and he's analyzing what they're doing right every week and then using that information to predict who he thinks will be in those contests the following week. And I'm looking at his article right now. He's pretty much nailed that 5 out of the 6 weeks in terms of nailing a guy who's going to be cash game viable the following week. So give that a look. It's called the Sharp Report. It's on our DFS landing page on footballguys.com. I think you're going to like it.
Yep, that's a good recommendation. Ryan, now that your room service food has arrived at your remote location hotel, are you prepared with a parting thought?
Not at a nice enough hotel to have room service. But yes, so first of all, I'm not wearing the UCF shirt today, but every Traquan Smith reference, I wanted to do my normal on-brand UCF shout out.
Right.
But yeah, so my parting thought will be a little bit self-serving, but I kind of changed up trend spotting this week. I added some new things. I also removed some sections to try to tighten it up because it is like one of the longest articles perhaps on the entire internet. So I don't know if that's good or bad that it's long. So this week I shortened it up. And if anybody I assume the folks watching this are also consuming that and other things on the Football Guys site. So please reach out to me if you like it, and definitely reach out to me if you hate it. I would appreciate that very much. Just trying to make it,
fire Ryan.
trying to make it
Trying
to make it better for the people. Trend spotting.
Nice.
And other than that, thanks for putting up with the ringing phone in the background, and let's go #win Devin's money.
There we go. I like it. So thanks for listening and watching this week, everyone. That's all. That'll do it for our show. For our latest content, go to footballguys.com. We'll be back next Friday morning with our Week 8 episode. And so, on behalf of John Lee, Devin Knotts, Ryan Hester, I'm Austin Lee saying thank you for watching and thanks for being a football guy. To check out our content at footballguys.com, click the button on Devin's face. To subscribe to our YouTube channel, be sure to click on the button on John's face. And if you'd like to see our latest video, click on the giant video in front of Ryan's face. Click any of those now. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.